What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. And I am back after a few weeks off with some PFL action. Obviously, it's the second batch of PFL fights coming up. It's PFL 4 regular season from this year. It's on the 8th of June. It's starting at 6 p.m. ET, and you can obviously find it on your local listings wherever you are in the world. And it's a pretty good card. The featherweights and the light heavyweights are on show, and I suppose there's a lot of different fights going to be featured than I suppose there was supposed to be. And we have to talk about, I suppose, the elephant in the room in terms of all these drug test failures. Now, I've talked about them in detail in a few different podcasts, so there's no point kind of getting into maybe all that, although I will here in a second. But the bigger thing I want to talk about here, just before I get into the preview of the card, is what it actually means for the tournaments going forward, which is obviously what I've been talking about in these previews for the last while. But if you haven't heard, there has been a whole litany of drug test failures after the first round of fights. So the biggest names, I suppose, Rob Wilkinson failed, and all of these people as well, some of them have already gone in front of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Some of them have but have to do it again, and some of them haven't yet. So, everyone has the right to have their B sample done and their day in whatever sort of court it is if they want it. So keep that in mind as well. But the people who have been flagged, I should say, better than anything else, Rob Wilkinson, obviously the standout name, the light heavyweight champion, the standout fighter in PFL over the last year, I would suppose, with a couple of others. Christoph Jotko and Will Fleury, who both fought each other last time out. Rizan Kuniev, Bruno Capelloza, the former champion, Mohamed Fakardine, Cesar Ferreira, Daniel Torres, and Thiago Santos as well. I hope I'm missing anyone there, but that is the top and bottom of it, I suppose. And just I suppose to briefly recap my thoughts in it again is that it's interesting how, and like I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, it's PFL and everyone in PFL is taking drugs and everything like this. I actually think it's an MMA wide problem in that, but also I think it's a Nevada thing in terms of all of these failures, because they are the reason for it, right? This was a Nevada test. This wasn't USADA or PFL or anything like that. And like my initial thought when there was so many test failures was, some mistake must have happened. Like there was, all these tests got, thrown in together and one person had it and they all ended up, or something like that. That was my initial thought. And obviously that seems like it's obviously not the case now. But then the second part of this was, how did they catch all of these people? And I think that's a very interesting question that, if an intrepid reporter maybe was to get onto a Nevada State Athletic Commission call and possibly ask them if they have some sort of new testing or anything like that, it would be very, very interesting to see if they have that. And obviously they're catching people better than they have ever caught them before. And it's interesting. Obviously the UFC have USADA and they're doing a lot of their testing, but when they go to Nevada and different places, they test as well. But when there's obviously 3 different fight nights in a row, 3 weeks in a row in the same place. Very, very interesting that they were all, I suppose, caught by the one commission. So look, going forward, I wonder what the state of play will be. But look, I don't think anyone involved in MMA hasn't thought that there was like a rife use of PEDs. Whether that's inside the UFC, outside the UFC, inside PFL, outside PFL, Bellator, wherever it might be. And like, if you've listened to any of my comments I've made over the last few years, do I think that the USADA has gotten rid of him? I don't, to be honest. And there's another debate again, is like, should they even be gotten rid of? And that's, as I said, a debate for another day. You'd want a half an hour long show maybe to have that debate. Check out my guy Luke Thomas for a lot of that. He's more educated than me and everything. But the state of play, so that's the state of play we have, but the state of play with the tournaments then is something I will discuss on the shows going forward. I suppose I will discuss them on the weeks where it's prevalent when those weight classes are up, and I'll tell you who's new in the in each bracket, and also what the matches are going to look like, obviously. So we'll start off today by doing that. It's warm here in Ireland. It's like 30 degrees Celsius here. I'm boiling. I'm not able for it. I need some EPO or something to cool me down here. But anyway, this weekend we have the 145 pound men and the 205 pound men as well, and there's some few other fights, but those are the main ones here. And let's just look at the people who are in those brackets right now over here on the PFL website. So we have Brendan Loughnane after one fight, who is on 5 points, Bubba Jenkins on 3 points, Movlid Khaybulaev on 3 points, and Gabriel Braga on 3 points as well. Then we've Jesus Pinedo, Raiji Kudo, Chris Wade, Marlon, Moraes, all on 0 points for their first fights, Tyler Diamond and Joe Sung Bin. And then over on the light heavyweight standings, we have Marthin Hamlet and Josh Silveira, who are about on 6 points, Ty Flores on 3 points, and then we have Delan Monte, Sam K, Tim Caron, all on 0 points. Just Delan Monte and Sam K, who are on 3 points, who had one fight already. So only 5 guys have had fights there. But coming in as well, who without a fight, Tim, as I mentioned, Tim Caron, Tyler Johnson, Impa Kasanganay, Andrew Sanchez, and Dan Spohn. So a few familiar names there. Look, the people they brought in, I think Impa Kasanganay is a very good addition to it. Obviously, we've seen Andrew Sanchez around, Dan Spohn has been in the tournament before. So some good fill-ins there. And for the other side of it, Tyler Diamond, we'll talk about him in a second, but I think he's actually an excellent fill-in, and I think could cause a few shocks. So very, very good. And I was impressed as well watching Joe Sung Bin, so we'll talk about him as well in a minute. The last thing I'll say on this is I think it's a very, very unfortunate time for PFL. Probably the worst time for it to happen, because you're after one fight. It kind of messes up the whole tournament, because you had a tournament started and you've had to adjust the whole tournament after one fight. If this happened and they lost 8 people on the eve of the tournament, you could get 8 new people in and it's all 8 starting from the start, you know? Or even if it happened after the regular season, we could get new people in and they're straight into the playoffs. It feels like, you know, you've one fight to earn your way. We saw it happening last year with even 1 or 2 of the winners, and there's no problem with it. So it's a very unfortunate. I feel a bit bad for PFL, if I'm being honest, because I would say if they had the choice and they could click their fingers and restart their tournaments and call off, you know, the fights that have already happened, they would, but they can't really do that. It'd be unfair in the likes of Brendan Loughnane and Bubba Jenkins and others to do that. So they go forward, you know, plus they have TV deals and everything like that as well. You can't just stop, so they have to the show must go on, as they say in MMA, and that it will. But that is a state of play, and I hope I explain that somewhat, at least for the next few weeks. We can talk about the fights and more, and look at who's fighting and all of that. I think just one last thing on it, I suppose. I think with the names of some of the people who've actually failed, I just wonder, how, or flagged, I should say. I wonder maybe how long they'll be out, and if they can come back next year, and if they'll even still be with the PFL, because you wouldn't like to lose Bruno Capoloza, who's one of your best guys. You wouldn't like to lose Thiago Santos, who's a big star in the UFC and came over. You wouldn't like to lose Will Fleury when you're coming in to Ireland here at the end of the year. Rob Wilkinson, who's probably arguably your best fighter. Be very unfortunate to lose all of them. Now, what is their stance going to be? I suppose we will see on that, and maybe they'll pick and choose, which is probably the right way to do it, depending on, as I said, how the B samples and all of that go. But it's an interesting time for the PFL, and not only this season, but how next season will look as well. Right, let's talk about the fights. And first of all, in the main event, it's going to be Brendan Loughnane versus Jesus Pinedo. Now, I've got the odds here as well. I'll give you the odds for these fights, and these are from my friends over at fightodds.io. I believe it is. Take these odds now with a pinch of salt. Please look them up yourself as well, because these are very much the first odds. The second I saw these odds coming out, I was making these video. So from this video, even. So from everyone knows the odds change rapidly once they come out at the start. But minus 500 for Brendan Loughnane against plus 375 for Jesus Pinedo in an interesting fight between the pair, I suppose. Like Loughnane, if you don't know Loughnane by now, you probably never know him. Went on a great run last year. Looked so good. As someone who's been covering his career for a long time, saw him fight as a 135er against Tom Duquesnoy in Dublin. How long ago was that? I'll look it up here on Sherlock. It feels like, oh, look at this, 2015. So, 8 years ago? My Lord, 8 years ago is an awful long time. But yeah, he was on the Ultimate Fighter, I remember, a long time ago as well, fought against Norman Park to try to get into the house and things like that. So, he's been around for a long time, but, we all know what happened with Brendan Loughnane. He was obviously on his way to get into the UFC, won the fight against Bilalgio, dominated him, took him down the last second, and then Dana White cut him because Dana White didn't sign him because he went for a takedown to win a fight when he's wanted probably the best fighter ever. Maybe there's someone else, but he has to be up there with the best fighter to ever fight on the Contender Series. But he hasn't looked back since. He's on good money now, and he's, since then, like, it's insane the amount of fights Brendan Loughnane has had in the last while. That was 2019, right? He signed for the PFL shortly after that. He fought Matt Wagey, David Valencia, Sheehan, Moraes, Tyler Diamond, Movlid. He fought Kudo. He fought Ago Husic. He fought Chris Wade, Bubba Jenkins, Marlon Moraes. And he's won all but one of them against Movlid in a split decision, which it was actually a lot closer of a fight than a lot of people maybe remembered. So what a run Brendan Loughnane has been on. An absolutely unbelievable run. And, if you look at Pinedo as well, he's been on a pretty good run. Okay, he lost his last fight to start off the season against Gabriel Braga, but he won 4 in a row before that. He was in the UFC for a bit of a stretch, went 1-1 there, but before that as well, he had won 7 in a row. So what a run he has been on, and started off his career with a good few wins as well. He's only lost 3 fights since 2014. So what a great run he's been on, and getting a lot of finishes, a lot of knockouts and things like that as well. It's two guys really who have put it all on the line over the last few years. Only 26 years of age, Pinedo and Brendan Loughnane. He's getting on a little bit, I suppose, into 33 years of age now, but still in the real prime of his career. And I think if you watched him last year, you would know it. Like, I had high enough expectations for Brendan Loughnane, having watched him for a long time, and I didn't think he'd be able to reach the levels he reached last year, honest to God. And I was even saying it, like, if he got to the UFC, or if he was in the UFC, I should say more correctly, I think he could be a highly ranked fighter there with the performances he put on against the likes of Chris Wade and Bubba Jenkins and Husic before that. He was phenomenal in those fights. Like, he fought Kudo, he could have lost that fight, but it was it was one where he came into a few of those fights with injuries and things, but by the end of the season, when he got his injuries together, he looked the best he's ever looked. Looked great against Marlon Moraes, again, a really smart display there, and it's going to be an interesting fight here, I think, as well, against Pinedo. If you haven't watched Pinedo, went back and watched a bit of him. He's a southpaw who likes to keep his hands low, bit of odd movement on the outside, nice low kicks, open for low kicks himself, which if you've watched Loughnane, especially in his last fight, you saw a good few of them. Pinedo has kind of this wide stance, which is really good for kind of whipping in shots, lovely head kicks and whatnot, uses his size very well, nice side kicks and things like that. So he's a lot of shots in the barrel, and I think he will cause problems for a lot of guys. I honestly believe that. But Loughnane is made to beat a fighter like this, and that's why he's minus 500. He's just... the one word I would use to describe Brendan Loughnane is fundamental. He's just fundamentally very good. A very good jab, a very good backhand, very good combinations, very good defense, very good wrestling, very good defensive wrestling. Fundamental all the way. Looks good. And like he looks like a guy who trained with Dominic Cruz once upon a time, or still does the odd time, or but like how Dominic Cruz would train you to fight yourself, not how he would train you to fight like him, if you get me. Just a very, very good fighter, a top level fighter, and Pinedo's a dangerous matchup. I mean, make no mistake about that. If Brendan is off or there's any bit of an injury, we saw with a guy who's kind of wild like Kudo did with him last year. He gave him mad problems, very, very, very large problems in that fight. But he did deal with them in the end, and he did get through that fight. Although we know it was, went to the judges halfway through the third round, so it was a bit of an odd one. But he did get through it, and I think that's what will happen here as well. I don't think maybe it'll look as clean or as good as the Moraes fight, simply because I don't think Pinedo will be as open to what happened to Moraes as Moraes was, if you get me. I think it'll probably be a decision win for Brendan Loughnane here, but I could see him winning maybe all 3 rounds or something like that, or maybe a late stoppage, because that's the kind of the way he fights as well. But it's a very good fight and a very very, very interesting one there at featherweight. I'm going to look at the light heavyweight fight, and I'm going to go back and forth between them here. I'm looking at Dan Spohn versus Ty Flores, plus 175 for Spohn, minus 215 for Flores. Spohn is this tall, rangy southpaw. He fought, I think, in three seasons, I think, of the PFL before already. You know, as I said, tall for a light heavyweight, 6'4". He almost subbed. I'm back and watched his fight with Sardi. Almost subbed him. You know, looks good on the ground, takes the back well, good ground and pound. But I think he's almost too willing to strike. He's active with his jab and his right hand, hooks with the backhand left, kind of a big hooking left shot. I don't think he's the best cardio in the world, and I think that might be a bit of an issue here. Although Flores, I don't think he has the best cardio ever. The one thing he does have here, though, is the wrestling, and I think he is a better wrestler. Not the fastest fighter in the world, though. And if he's not a great athlete, Flores, I don't think. I think Spohn, maybe, he's not exactly Usain Bolt or whoever it might be, but I think he's a better athlete than Flores. And if he can win that top, I think this fight's going to go to the ground. Whoever gets on top is going to win. They're both very good on top. I think Flores is very, very good on top. I think he tries to throw better on the feet than Spohn. I think Spohn is just, as I said, a little bit too open, a little bit too swingy, whereas I use the word fundamental. I wouldn't describe Flores as fundamental like Loughnane, but he's a more fundamental fighter, I think, than Spohn. I honestly, I do think this will go to the ground. I think whoever is the winner on the ground will be the winner, and I think that will be Flores. I just think his the top game of whichever fighter gets on top will win this. And who's more likely to get on top? I would say Flores. So I think that minus 215. Would I bet in it? Probably not at that price, but I do think that's the bet here to go for if you are going for one. Right, then in my opinion, the best fight on the card is at featherweight, and it's Movlid Khaybulaev at minus 800 against Tyler Diamond, who's plus 550. And you'll have to tune into the betting show this week, because if that price stays the way it is, I'll guarantee you that will be a price on the betting show, because I think this is a very even fight. A very, very even fight, actually. Tyler Diamond is, I think people might be sleeping on him a little bit. I really, really do think they might be sleeping on him a little bit. He's fighting out a team alpha male, and one of the fights I went back and watched from Movlid was his matchup against Lance Palmer, and I thought he struggled in that a little bit. Now, he ended up winning the fight in the end, and also that's all well and good, but I thought I think Diamond is a similar sort of fighter, maybe a little bit of a better wrestler. Now, he has lost to Loughnane, and he lost to Bryce Mitchell in the Ultimate Fighter finale a few years ago as well. So, obviously when you lose to Bryce Mitchell, you know what way you're losing. So that's not a great sign, I suppose, for coming in fighting Movlid. But if he can do and learn from what Palmer did and learned, I think there's a chance, because I think Diamond is not a bad striker at all. He has a bit of power. He doesn't have a lot of knockouts or anything like that on his record. But I liked what I saw from him, and I think horses for courses. I just have a feeling this fight is going to be a little bit closer maybe than a lot of people think, and certainly closer than that minus 800 betting line there. Like what Movlid has, right? We'll talk about what he really has in a second, but what he has is flying knees, and he's a flying knee KO of the year contender over Damon Jackson, but he is a wrestle first fighter. Let's be real about that. He is well rounded, but wrestle first. Moves his hands. Very kind of odd, quick motion. You don't know what he's going to do, if he's going to punch you, if he's going to try to take you down or what. But he's a very risk-averse fighter. And if you wait on him, he'll wait on you, and he'll continue to wait on you. And that turns his fights into very close fights sometimes. So if you're Diamond and you can stop the takedown and land a few shots, it could turn that close fight your way, you know? So Diamond, as I said, our alpha male college wrestler, his striking looks good. You know, he throws a lot of feints, like the catch kicks. That's very hard to say. Why is that so hard to say? He likes to catch kicks. He looks to attack immediately as well when he gets to the ground. Now, he has good wrestling, as I mentioned as well, but will he be able to take Movlid down? Like, if one of them can take each other down, they'll win the fight. I think it's simple as that. I think Movlid is probably more probable that he will get the takedown, but I wouldn't say it's probable, though. I wouldn't say that. Diamond is very good grinding against the cage, jabs when leading. When he leads with his jab, but when he's pushed back, he throws punches as well, which can open you for the takedown, absolutely, especially against someone as good as Movlid, but also allows you to land strikes. So if that is the price on the betting show, Tyler Diamond will be my pick at plus 550. Let's see if that'll change though here in the next day or two before that betting show comes out. But very, very interesting line there, and I will definitely be keeping an eye on that one. If you're to give me even money, who do I pick? Straight up pick on the fight, I'm going to give you Khaybulaev. I think he might just be able to get a couple of takedowns and do enough, but I honestly think it's a toss of a coin. Now, colour me wrong again. We'll go out and Movlid will sub in him in 2 minutes or something. Fair enough, but I'm here to tell you what I think, and that's what I think. So that's the truth of it. We'll move on to the light heavyweight division, and the guy leading the way, Marthin Hamlet, is a big favourite here. He's over minus 1,000. He's minus 1,250 here over fight odds, and Sam K is plus 850. I think Sam K is a good fighter, to be honest, but it's not a great matchup if we're also being honest for him. He comes in here, coming off of what I suppose has been a tough couple of fights in the PFL. Lost both of them, lost to Juan Adams, lost to Josh Silveira, and like the wrestling is going to be an issue. I watched as many of his fights outside of PFL as I could find before he signed, and what he does have is good wrestling of his own, good offensive wrestling, good elbows, good knockout power. That's what he has. So if he can keep the fight standing, he has every chance, absolutely every chance. Or, which I think might be a good option, and we saw it last week over in KSW out of Mamad Khalidov. Go for the takedown yourself. Don't wait for your opponent to take you down. Go out and take him down. I think that's actually a great option against Marthin Hamlet. I really do. Because Hamlet, if you don't know him, very good wrestler, heavy on top, stinging with strikes when he is allowed to land them. He's very fast and he hits hard. An underrated fighter. I would say Marthin Hamlet, if you don't watch PFL all the time, you probably don't understand how good he is. Like, the only good lads he's lost on the last few years are Josh Silveira, who came in and looked very good, Shoeface, who's very good, and Corey Hendricks as well. That was back in 2021. He's beaten Cesar Mochanche, beaten Antigoulas, beaten Hendricks again in the rematch, and beaten Fakhreddine, obviously last time out back in April, January, February, March, April, yeah. So he's coming in here, off of a good run, off a good 1-3 of his last 4 fights. And I think he will smell blood this year as well, with some of the top fighters out, obviously, after all that's happened. Is he the favourite? I think he's one of the favourites, certainly right up there. So I think he'll smell blood and he will want to get this win and cruise into the championships. And I think it's a big, big, big opportunity for him. And I think he will win it. That price a little bit high, but I think it's good. The aforementioned Josh Silveira as well is in the next few fights. In the next fight even, he is minus 600 against Delan Montes, plus 425. Look, Silveira, again, very well rounded. He came in last year on short notice, and I was very impressed watching him. Very good wrestler, very good on the ground. He's 10-1 now. You know, he lost last year to Amari Akhmedov, who went all the way to the final, but he beat Marthin Hamlet last year, as I mentioned earlier on. He's not fighting him today, he's fighting Delan Monte, but that could be a fight that'll happen again down the line. And as I said, Marthin Hamlet thinks he's one of the favourites. Josh Silveira, there's $1 million up in the line here, and these lads are going to be going for it. So it's a big opportunity, and a big opportunity as well for Delan Monte, you know, who lost to Rob Wilkinson and Ty Flores in his last two, lost to Shoeface as well before that. But as I said again, these lads are all in with big chances now. Look, it's an interesting fight. Monte, this is a striker against a wrestler, or should work out that way anyway. I think Silveira is more than that, and so is Monte, in fairness. But Monte, just heavy pressure, heavy-handed, pushes you against the cage with strikes and tries to land on you. That's what he is. Where Silveira is very well rounded, very good on the ground, very good wrestling, but very good jiu-jitsu, and can step from position to position and submission to submission. And I think that's what this fight is going to look like. I really, really do. And I think I think he will win it. A -600, I think might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think that's how the fight will go there. Right, let's run through the last few fights. We'll end it on the two featherweight fights. We have a non-tournament featherweight fight between Alexei Pergande -325 and Akeem Bashir plus 250. Abigail Montes, who beat Clarissa Shields, is back here as well. She's fighting Brandy Hester. We've Andrew Sanchez who's coming in. Interesting fight against Tyler Johnson. Very close in terms of the betting there. -150 over plus 120 for Johnson. I would favour Sanchez, but Johnson, you know, it'd be interesting to see if he can climb that as well. And on the Montes one, she's -450 plus 350 for Hester. I mentioned Impa Kasanganay earlier on. He's fighting Tim Caron. We know Impa Kasanganay throw all these big wild shots. Caron, he's tall, strong, not the fastest in the world, and not the best wrestler. I think this will be a striker matchup, and you don't want to put on a striker matchup against Kasanganay. I think he'll be able to get his shots off, and I think he'll be able to land there. And in the last three, as I mentioned, with the featherweight matchups, Gabriel Alves Braga against Marlon Moraes. Braga is -315, Moraes plus 255. If I didn't give you the price on the Kasanganay one, actually, -450. He is Tim Caron plus 350. I think that's just about right. I think the Braga price is about right as well. He's a very good boxer, very heavy hips when he's on the ground, and he can get it to the ground. And for Moraes, look, Moraes has looked good early in all of the fights where he's looked bad after that. All of them nearly. So he can win any of these fights, but he has to do it early. He has to do it in minute 1 or 2. And if he doesn't, it's going to go bad for him. It really is, because I just don't think he has it in him anymore to go and produce a long distance fight. I know maybe I'm wrong. We will see. But someone like Braga, who can box, who can be heavy on the ground, if Moraes doesn't get it done early, it feels like the pain will be brought by Braga. So this is the sort of bet. If I'm looking at it from a betting point of view, maybe Moraes the first round and then Braga overall. I think something like that. But I do think Braga will win it. It's hard to pick Marlon Moraes at this stage of his career. He was a great fighter, but it's hard to say he still is that. The perennial PFL featherweights in Bubba Jenkins and Chris Wade. Chris Wade, first of all, is taking on Ryoji Kudo. My guy, one of my favourite fighters. Wade is -270. Kudo is plus 210. And everyone knows, every time I say Kudo plus, I'm like, well, yes, let's look at that, because that's not a bad bet at all. Wade is a good fighter, a very good fighter. He kicks a lot for a guy who is, I suppose, known as a wrestler, which means it kind of does turn into a wrestling match sometimes, because if someone wants to wrestle against him, he throws a lot of kicks out there to allow himself to be wrestled, which he's happy with. He's very strong, very willing to throw as a striker, but also very good on the ground, unless he's fighting someone, like a Jenkins or something, who's a very good wrestler. Whereas Kudo is so fast, really powerful, good takedowns as well, maybe not as good as Wade, that might be the problem, and a really good counter fighter as well. So if Wade is throwing those shots, Kudo will be there to land shots back. We saw the issue he had with Bubba last year, a bit small, and when he does get kind of caught, he finds it very hard to get out. And I mean, caught in a bear hug or caught in the clinch, very hard to get out. That's what Wade needs to do. Can he do it? Probably plus 270. If you gave me Kudo plus 300, I'd probably take it at plus 210. I'm not so sure. And in the final fight, in the middle of the card, I think this is topping the preliminary edition of the card, Bubba Jenkins against Sung Bin Jo. Joe, all his wins by stoppages, big and fast for the weight. But his head is up in the air and he's there to be hit. A lot of pressure, counters everything. He just throws all the time. But the problem here, big problem, he's open to the takedown. We saw it in the fight, was it against Tyler Diamond he fought, wasn't it? But keeps fighting when taken down and is able to get back up. Bubba, obviously we know, is a southpaw. Very good wrestler. He out-wrestled, I was mentioning, he out-wrestled Lance Palmer back in the day. Out-wrestled Kudo last year. He out-wrestled Wade and got all the way until he met Brendan Loughnane. But he jumps in with his striking. But it is effective. It is effective. But will he want to be doing that against Joe? I'm not too sure. He looks better and better, but I don't think this is the sort of fight when you test it. And he's minus 410, plus 310 for Joe. I think the wrestling here will be the biggest factor. I think Bubba will hold on to him. And it's not even the wrestling. I think the wrestle clinch against the cage for Bubba, like he did in the semi-final last year, is the way to win this fight for him. And I do think that's how he will. Win it. So. Yeah, those are my picks. That is my preview, and it should be fun. It's on this Thursday night, I believe. ESPN over in the States, and you can find it here as well in Ireland, and find it on your local listings all over. I believe it's on DAZN in Ireland. Yeah, so find it on your local listings everywhere else around the world. All right, we will leave it there until next week. I'll be back with the preview for that card and the week after as well. So I will see you then. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.